Okay. Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Right, we'll give people another minute or two to get logged in. All right, let's start with our accountability. Happy Monday. Hope you guys all had productive weekends. Lane, you want to catch us up on your accountability and how your contacts have been going?
Yeah. It's been going pretty good. Been working with a lender to try and do like a first time home buyer event thing at my apartment complex here soon.
Great.
And then just working with her to do some farming and stuff like that too. So it's going well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good job. Alexander?
Hey, how you doing today? Yeah, going good. Just working on marketing stuff right now to gather more clients. And yeah, I'm going out today and doing a bunch of flyers and some meet and greet handshake type deals. But it's going good.
Good. Perfect. Emily Nordquist?
I have a listing going live tomorrow. So I think I have everything settled for that. And then I just got a referral from a friend for a potential listing. So I'm waiting to hear back on that. And then the listing that went live last week, I haven't heard no views, nobody wanting to come see it yet, but it's kind of remote. So we'll see.
Yeah. Awesome. Great job. It's really rolling. Emily Steele?
Hi. I'm just working on some marketing stuff, getting my social media up and running, all that good stuff. I have business cards in the mail, so they should be here soon. I have one potential lead, a friend of my family who's looking to buy a smaller home. Kids are grown and they're downsizing, so I'm following up with them hopefully by the end of this week, but it sounds like they're pretty ready to go. So that'll be good if that pans out.
Wonderful. Mitch?
Hey Mara, everything's going good. Just kind of the same. Working on a couple more open houses, trying to get those planned in the next couple weeks, and really just trying to take that route to gain more leads. So just been working on that.
Great. Lori? Excellent. Thanks for the chat. Diana, how's everything with you? Okay. All right. who did I miss? Anyone? That was everyone. Perfect. I am sending you guys the material now. I have the little ding dong sound on. And then as far as the class today, we are doing Win the Buyer. And we have Tim English as our wonderful instructor. And Tim was the #1 buyer's agent from Keller Williams in Capital City in 2020. He earned his principal broker's license a couple years ago and launched his own team and opened up a mega agent office. And he gave me some updates today too. Let me grab those real quick. Where'd they go? Did I hide them for myself? Yep. So this is the 8th year in real estate. And then he is a father of 12. He loves spending time with his family on their Harvey farm in, is it Rick Reel?
Yeah, Rick Real. Yeah.
Perfect. Currently reading Grant by Ron Chernow. Did I pronounce that right? Ron Chernow. Just watched How to Train Your Dragons live action. Exciting. I love that movie. And then he's getting ready to release his 3rd album of original songs July 10th, which he writes and does modern Christian worship music. So you have a very well-rounded family man who just happens to be exceptional at working with buyers. So make sure you ask questions, engage, get as much out of today as possible, and you could not be in better hands.
Thank you, Maura. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Excited to see you all. Strap in and buckle because we've got a lot to get to today. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you a few slides to kind of use as our outline. So let me, let's see, let me do this first. Open. Downloads. There we go. Okay, back to show. Okay. Back to you guys. All right, here we go. Sorry about the delay. All right, everybody. Feel free to come off the mute because this is meant to be interactive. So as long as you don't have like background noises going on, I'd love for you to just be off of mute and be able to answer questions as or ask questions as we go along. So
Christian music.
okay.
I was like, here, Christian.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. We are.
Wash off.
Yeah, well, you sure.
We are. Okay, let's start from there. Okay. We're basically going to go around this circle and use this 7-point outline, if you will, to talk about working with buyers in real estate. So we're starting with leads to appointments. So obviously, first place you got to start is you got to find some leads, right? So let's talk about that. What some of you guys are doing. I heard some different activity that was going on. Let's talk about where do we find these leads? Where are we going to find our buyers at? So again, come off of mute or put it in the chat. Just give me some different lead gen methods or places where we're going to be able to find buyers or potential buyers.
I've been trying to do the open house route because I like the in-person interactions the most.
Yep, that's a great one. It's a solid one that works pretty well. Yep. What
Did you
else?
say you're in Rick Rial?
What's that?
Did you say you're in Rick Rial?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, so we're even more remote than Rick Rial, Monmouth, if you can believe that. So open houses aren't a thing where we are.
Right.
So it's more of just word of mouth, getting out my information on local avenues, and people are starting to talk. So my husband and went to our local store, and people were asking that I hadn't even spoken to directly. So my name's getting out there, and out where we are, that's huge.
Good. Good. Where are you at?
Do you know where Womack is, or Pine Hollow?
No.
Do you know where Maupin is?
Yes.
We're nearish to Maupin.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, you are out there.
Yeah. But I went to school in Monmouth, so I know exactly
Oh,
where
you went,
you are.
okay. To college?
Yeah. From
Okay,
Western.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So did I. My wife and I, that's where we met, was at Western Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah. So tell me about your database then, Emily. I'm guessing out there it's really could be a fairly tight network of who knows who.
It is. And I'm really monopolizing on the fact that I'm the only local real estate agent out here.
Good.
There is not a single real estate agent that lives in my zip code.
Gotcha.
There's someone that owns a business out here, but they don't live here locally. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm really trying to promote that as, hey, I just live down the road. I can be your
Yeah.
best choice. So
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I think that's your best route, right? Is build your database. It's going to be networking with people, having coffee, building those relationships. Um, seeing people at the store, dropping by their house, making sure that people know that you care about them, so that whenever they need to buy or sell, they think of you.
right. And
Yeah.
I've got a flyer that I'm waiting to get a decent picture for. And then I'm going to put it in kind of all the local places where all the locals know where to look.
Okay.
So that's really going to be my focus. Is I'm the only neighbor agent, and I think that'll be good, because of just where we are. A lot of the things that we talk about in these classes would never work out here. So I'm going to focus on the local.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think really, I'll open it up here for some more input on other lead generation methods. Maybe just jot this. Everybody might want to jot this down. Basically, so you're not just always relying on one stream of leads. It's a good idea to have what we call I've just heard that term, buckets, right? So it's figured like you've got 3 buckets. Where am I going to get my leads from? So, maybe my strategy is, one of these 3 is always going to be your database, the people that you already know. Because what we know from there is that if you properly communicate with your database every year, you're going to have a 12-to-1 ratio on people that you talk to. Meaning, if I follow up with everybody that I know, for every 12 contacts that I make with them, one person there's going to be 1 lead for every 12 people that I talk to. Okay. When I'm talking to people that I don't know, it's a 50-to-1 ratio. So a lot of times realtors shoot themselves in the foot because they get scared about talking to friends and family. And they just go after people that they don't know. And then you feel like you're spinning your wheels. And that's why, because you got to talk to a lot of people before you get a lead. So much better to get over your fear of talking to the people that you do know, because they're the ones that you going to want to do business with in the future anyways. So anyway, yeah, just remember those 2 ratios. So one of your buckets is always going to be database, and then you can choose 2 other buckets. So whether it's open houses whether it's networking, like you might belong to certain civic organizations in the community that serve the community, or maybe they're interest or hobby related. You know, maybe somebody likes to go cycling, or, you know, maybe they like to work on cars or whatever it is. There's different hobby groups, but so it could be networking, belonging to 2 or 3 different groups where you're going to get interaction with people. There's good old door knocking, right? The very last place you want to find leads is online. And I don't mean like working social media, I mean buying leads. A lot of people go to buying leads at some point, and um, in my 8 years of real estate, I've tried several different ones at different points. Um, they're not worth the money. All right, they're just not. You end up spending a lot of time chasing down people, and if they wanted to work with you, they would have called you on the phone. So you're much better. You know, Gary Keller talks about being lead generation based and marketing enhanced. Okay, so sure, do some marketing, enhance your presence, make sure people know you're there, but never just rely on marketing or buying ads or whatever, or buying leads as your main source of lead generation. Because it's not reliable, it's not high quality. They're not the kind of, generally not, since you don't have any relationship with them really, they're a lot less likely to leave you a good review. They're a lot less likely to do repeat business with you. You're much better off growing your business organically, through open houses and networking, and just getting out there and meeting people. And, you know, I think it was Gary Keller that basically just said, you know, the person who can make the most friends the fastest wins. And that's basically the game of real estate lead generation, is how fast can you meet people and build trust with them so that they want to do business with you. Okay. So find what works for you. Um, some people build a referral business, right? Like, whether it's, you know, referring people out to other parts of the country, or positioning yourself of making those contacts. Um, how many of you are using Command? Are you guys learning Command?
Painfully, but yes.
Okay,
Getting it figured out.
you're getting it figured out.
A
Okay,
little bit.
so there's a tab, and one of the parts in there is about referrals, and you can find out for where you live, both the top 10 or 20 places that people are moving to, and the top 10 to 20 places that people are moving from to where you live. So both going and coming, you'll find some overlap, but you'll also find some differences in some various cities where people are moving to or from to your location. And then from there, you can start researching and finding agents who have a decent level of experience in production, and reaching out to them, giving them a call or an email or what have you, and saying, hey, I'm in Salem, Oregon, and I'd love to be a referral partner with you. If you ever, you know, need somebody, if you're ever sending somebody this way, or if I ever need to send somebody your way, let's be referral partners. So it's a it's not a lead generation method that's going to produce results overnight. But if you keep at it, um, you know, I'm at a place where I've built enough of a network and enough relationships and built, a reputation in my area such that, I'll do 4, 5, 6 deals a year that are people are referring from different parts of the country are referring buyers to me. So, and my name is not Tanya, so let's see if I could change my name. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. My name's Tim, in case you were wondering. All right. Okay. So, we talked a little bit about lead generation, different methods, different ways you can find leads. Basically comes down to hard work. Basically comes down to maybe getting over your fear of talking to people and connecting with people. Keller Williams has tons of dialogues and talk tracks. If you know, or maybe you have an agent that or somebody in your market center or Mara. But basically, find something to say. I come from not from a business background. I come from a church ministry background as a pastor. And so I just like calling people to just basically, you guys know the acronym FORD. You call people up and you ask them questions about their family and friends, their occupation, their recreation, and their dreams. People love to talk about themselves, and if you just call them up and say, hey John, how you doing? How's the family? And genuinely be interested in people and just literally just get to know them and ask them some questions. They're going to figure it, if they don't already know, they're going to know that you're a real estate agent. And at some point, they're going to ask you, well, how's the market? Right. And you can give them a quick rundown of what's going on in the market right now. And then you can ask them, hey, do you know of anybody? Generally, they're going to say no, right? They're not going to know of anybody. So you could even do a follow-up question. A lot of, when I was first getting started and I was reaching out to all the people that I knew that, like 99% of them are going to say no, that they're not doing real estate. And you don't want it to just all of a sudden like kill the conversation. So have a follow-up question like, hey, that's totally fine. I get it. I know, not everybody's, buying or selling a house very often. Who do you know that you think I should know? That'll really get them. Like they won't be seeing that question coming, and it'll show thoughtfulness on your part, and it'll show that you're not just looking for ready business right now. Like you're actually interested in relationships. So ask something to that effect of, so, Emily, who do you know that I should know? And then just let there be silence for a few seconds, let them think, and they'll come, what'll come to their mind is a person in their network of friends or family that is kind of a mover and a shaker, right? They'll think of somebody kind of important that maybe is a key person, and then they'll go, yeah, I think you should know this person. And I said, I'd love to meet them. Would you introduce me, either through a text or an email? I'd love to have coffee with them or just have a conversation, and just make it non-threatening. And it's a great way to meet new people, add more people to your database, and just build those relationships. And, again, it's not necessarily about the real estate piece. That will come. You're just trying to get to know as many people as possible. That's the key. So hopefully that makes sense and helps. All right. So let's see, there we go. There's our circle. All right, so here's another ratio that you want to write down. This will give you an idea of doing how much business that you should be doing out of your database. In your database, again, if you're properly communicating with your database and following Gary Keller's model in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, if you don't have that book, you need that book. You should read that book. Yeah, I've read the book probably at least 3 times. Lots of good stuff in there. It's the same. It's the real estate Bible. So make sure you have a copy of that if you don't already. But in there, it basically says that for every, well, whatever your number is in your database, Gary says 6.4%. I like to just round it down to 5% to be a little bit more conservative and adjust for error in case I'm not communicating at the highest level possible. And it's a lot easier to do the math at 5%. So on any given year, 5% of the people in your database will be doing real estate. Okay. So if you have 100 people in your database, that's 5 deals. All right. That's 5 deals. So just do the math and think about, okay, based on, my situation, how much money I would desire to make in a given year, divided by the average commission based on the average home sale, median home price in my area, then you can figure out pretty quickly how many deals you need to do each year. Does that make sense? Have you guys done this? Crunch numbers like that?
I
In the
feel like
beginning, in the beginning, we did an exercise where we did that.
Okay. So I have that. On my whiteboard. I have that on my whiteboard right next to my desk. Okay. You want to keep your goals in front of you every day, every week, right? Be reviewing your goals. So if I need to make X number of dollars, and I've calculated that down and said, okay, then I need to do, let's say, 24 deals this year. Then I know I'm tracking my numbers. I use a tracker. I put in how many calls I make every day. I keep track of when I find a lead, when I set an appointment, when I hold an appointment, if they signed, tracking all that stuff because I need to know, for every appointment, not everybody turned into a buyer. So how will I know next year how many appointments I need to have in order to reach my goal? So I need to know, kind of what my fallout rate is and see, and maybe there's an area where I need to improve. So basically it works like this. You're going to be making your contacts, and depending on what kind of contacts you're making and how well you do at making contacts, it's going to lead to to leads, right? However many leads. What we know is that it takes 4 to 5 leads, all right, to get to a buyer who actually signs with you. So starting out, I would just use the number 5. So just know that you're going to need, out of every 5 leads, probably one of those is going to be a buyer who actually you have an appointment with and who signs up to do business with you. Okay. And then, again, depending on what your skill level is in handling that buyer and what your market looks like in terms of available properties, you're probably still not going to convert every buyer to a paycheck. So you're going to need to know what your fallout rate there is as well. Anyway, you reverse engineer your success. So you need to have a very clear picture in mind and keep that picture in front of you at all times, because it will be your motivation and your direction for your activities, right? Otherwise, it's too easy to go, oh, I don't feel like doing lead generation, or oh, I'm kind of nervous, I'm kind of scared, these people don't want to talk to me, blah blah blah. I start telling myself all kinds of stories in my head. But if I've got my goals in front of me, and maybe I got a picture of my family in front of me, or a picture of whatever, whatever my why is, I need to know why I'm doing this. Then that's going to help me overcome my fears, overcome my laziness, overcome my distractions, and help me focus and work hard and do what I need to do. So make sure you have those things in place and know what your numbers are. So again, going back to your database, that's where the money is. That is where the money is. So don't chase it in a bunch of different places. Whether you're doing open houses or you're networking or however you're meeting people, it's always to feed the database. You didn't really make a serious contact, unless you got their number and or email. So make sure you're collecting. Don't be afraid to ask for people's contact information so that you can add it to your database. Otherwise, you can't properly communicate with them, right? So feed the database, get as many names in there as possible. And so again, if my goal was 24 and 5% of people are going to do business, so I would need, what would I need? Let's see, 100. If I had 100, there'd be 5 deals. So I would need basically 500 people in my database. Okay. Right now I have 827. Now, do I do a perfect job of communicating with all of them? No. But again, you just continue to add people to your database. So, don't discount that, right? Don't just leave people disorganized in your phone, or wherever you have people's contact information. Make sure it's in command, make sure it's organized, make sure you have a way to systematically communicate with them. That's how you're going to get more consistent paychecks. Okay. All right. So you find a lead, and now you need to set an appointment. So let's talk about identifying leads, how to kind of qualify that lead, and then set the appointment. Okay. One of the mistakes young real estate agents make is chasing buyers who do not end up buying. And it's disappointing and it's frustrating and it's a big waste of time. So the more work you do up front, asking questions, the better you're going to be able to help that person, the better you're going to be able to identify whether or not that person is a ready, able, willing buyer. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, don't ask enough questions. Let them, chase opening doors. Yeah, you're not doing yourself or them any favors. So definitely want to ask a lot of questions. All right, so we want to make sure that our buyers are A buyers. A buyers are ready, able, and willing. Okay, write down the acronym RAW. Ready, able, and willing. They need to have all three of those components to be an A buyer. Otherwise, they're a B or a C buyer. Okay, and I'll talk about those briefly here in a second too. All right, so an A buyer is ready, able, and willing. Ready, meaning if you were to go out today and find the home that they like, they're ready to put in an offer. Okay, so what would make a buyer ready versus not ready? What do they need to do to be ready?
Pre-qualification letter.
Right, they need to be pre-qualified, right? Pre-approved with a lender. So that also feeds into being able, right? They need to have the financial wherewithal to be able to buy a house. So we want to know that they're pre-approved, they're ready to go, and that they're able. So that's also the pre-approval letter, but that's also that asking questions probably in the appointment. You're not going to probably get financial information out of a lead who doesn't really even know you yet. But like once you're in the appointment, you can ask something like, what kind of cash do you have to work with in order, to be able to buy a home? So that's kind of a safe way to not just say, well, how much money do you have? So, what kind of cash do you have available to work with to help you be able to purchase a home? And so then they'll be able to tell you, well, I have, 20,000 or I have 10,000 or whatever. And you can go from there. So, you got to be able to do some math then kind of in your head fairly quickly of like, if they tell you, hey, I'm wanting to shop for a $400,000 home, but I have very little cash for the down payment, then they're going to need a USDA loan, or if they could get an FHA loan and it's 3.5% down, or maybe they're first time home buyers and they can get a 3% conventional loan instead of 5%. But you kind of need to know some of the basics around lending and some of the different lending programs, so you're able to kind of diagnose their situation and know whether or not what their chances are of being able to purchase a home in your market area.
Question.
Oh, yeah.
Do the pre-approval or pre-qualification letters state the amount that they're pre-approved for?
Yes.
They do. Okay. So if they shared that letter with you, you would see their amount.
Yeah. And typically, like if I'm sitting, it happens several different ways. Like let's just say if I was talking to you as a buyer, I would at some point in that conversation ask if you already had a mortgage lender and if you're pre-approved, right? So if some people know, some people don't know, they might go, yeah, I'm pre-approved, but I can't remember how much it was for. Or I've talked to several different people, but I don't think we finished our paperwork, or, you just try and figure out where they're at in the process. And then let's just say you were already pre-approved. You've already talked, you've got your mortgage lender. I would just say, I would ask who it was, and say, hey, would it be okay if I reached out? Well, usually I do this at the appointment. If, it would be kind of weird if before then. Before then, I'm just trying to find out if they're pre-approved. But in the consultation, when we get to there, then I'm saying, okay, who's your mortgage lender, and wanting to reach out and make contact with them. So I'll get their email and phone number. I'll give them a call, so we can, because you're you're a team, right? You gotta work together as a team to help these people get a house. And so you really need to be able to communicate well and work on a personal level with whoever their lender is. So I always get that information, give those people a call, and they'll email me their pre-approval letter, um, and we go from there. So when I'm talking to a lead, I'm trying to figure out if they're ready, able, and willing. So one way to do that, a real easy way, is to give them a scale from 1 to 10. You can just say, so Emily, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being if we went out today and you found the right house, you're ready to put in an offer. How would you rate yourself in terms of being ready to buy a house? You know, people might say, well, I'm a 7, or I'm an 8, or I'm a 5. Okay. So they're evaluating themselves as to their motivation of how ready they are. You know, are they wanting to buy it today, or they're wanting to buy 3 months from now? How ready are they? So you find out what number they are, and then you just ask the follow-up question: what would have to change in order for you to be a 10? And that's going to be the key right there. Then you're going to find out what their real motivation is, and what, if there's any serious obstacles holding them back. Some of those obstacles are legitimate, like waiting for kids to get out of school, or retiring, or waiting till recovering from a surgery, or whatever it is that's going on in their life. A lot of times though, it's simply fear or indecision, or their interpretation of the real estate market. They think they should wait, whatever it is. So you just got to be ready to handle their objections, and be able to say something like, well, I hear you. So you want to affirm them, right? You don't want to tell them that they're wrong. I hear you, and Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if I could find you the right house and I could help you save money, would you be interested in doing that sooner? See what they say. Most of the time, if you take the objections off the table and you just come from a position of wanting to help them, they'll go, yeah, sure. Because they don't think it'll happen, but they're willing to say yes. And so as soon as they say yes, boom, they open the door. Now you can have the appointment. Now you have the opportunity to win their trust, answer their questions, and hopefully take some of those obstacles and objections off the table, so that they're more willing to move forward. Okay, so we talked about being ready. That kind of has to do with their motivation. You can use the 1 to 10 scale to determine that. You can ask them about their pre-approval letter. And so they got a pre-approval letter, so they're ready, they're able. Then the last question is, are they willing? Right? And that one's a little bit more nebulous. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily something you can quantify, but you can pretty much tell whether maybe this is a very fearful person, or maybe it's a kind of stubborn, prideful person who you kind of determine is not going to listen to you. You just have to be a kind of a bit of a good people person, and be able to determine, is this person, if they hop in the car and we go looking at houses, are they going to pull the trigger on buying a house, or are they just going to string me along? Right? So that's really the importance of not just rushing out to show people homes. Like now with the Oregon law about having to have a signed buyer's agreement. Some people are just signing up, a non-exclusive buyer's agreement that says, hey, I'm your buyer agent for today, or I'm your buyer agent for this particular property. Just to be, just to be able to say they have one and they fulfilled the law. Well, it's still, you don't really have a client because they didn't really commit to anything. So I don't take those kind of people. I think it's kind of a waste of time. I think within the last year and a half, I've maybe had one person say no, they didn't want to work with me because I wouldn't rush out and show them a property. And I told them, no, we need to have a consultation. So I can figure out how to best help you. I need to get to know you as a client. I'm not just going to go out to, I'm not just a door opener. So they went on to somebody else, and that's like, fine. You're not going to listen to me anyways. I got plenty of other people I can work with. So don't feel like you have to do that. I know sometimes there's a temptation as a new agent to feel kind of desperate, but you want to make sure that that they see you as a professional.
Tim, can you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize. I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm new to Zoom.
Okay.
But I was told that there's like a 3-month or a 6-month period of time on those. Is that not true? Buyer's contract?
You can write whatever time period you want. There's nothing set. So you're basically creating an agreement between you and your client. So you guys, the two parties, get to determine what the terms of that agreement are.
Okay, so there's no law. I guess that's true for a selling contract also. It's just customary that it's 6 months or a year. Is that right?
Right. It's just
Okay.
customary that it's 6 months. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I think of it as law because it's just been so out there all the time, but that's right.
Yeah.
Between the two of you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, typically for a buyer or a seller, I tell them that I write these contracts for 6 months. But again, it could be a special situation, right? Like, could be a seller who just wants to put their property out there for 3 months and see what happens. Or it could be a piece of land that is going to take longer. So I tell them, hey, I'd like to write this for a year because it's bare land, or it just depends. But especially with buyers, I just tell them, hey, I write these for 6 months. Obviously, I don't want to be trying to help you find a house for 6 months. We're going to get this done a lot quicker than that. But this is typically what I write them for. And I really don't hardly have anybody argue with me on that. So if I'm following up with a lead and I've qualified them, like they are ready, they're able, and they're willing, then I need to set the appointment, right? I need to close and set the appointment. So 2 things about setting appointments. One, even if your calendar is wide open, don't tell them that. Okay. You can give the impression that you are desperate or inexperienced or whatever. So don't just say, hey, I'm open all next week. Just say something like, I have time tomorrow at 3 or Thursday at 4. It does a couple of things. One, you're in charge of your schedule. Instead of a lot of us who are kind of people pleasers or, really into customer service, we just want to be available and blah, blah, blah. Well, you open yourself up to being taken advantage of. Here in Keller Williams, one of the bold laws says that you teach people how you want to be treated. And so when I guard my schedule and when I give them 2 options, guess what? They honor my time a lot better than if I just say, "Oh, I'm open most afternoons next week." Then they just think, "Oh, I could just."
How are you? Hi, how are you? You're doing good.
Oh,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Hi.
okay. Um, I don't know, they just start to get the impression, either consciously or subconsciously, that that my time's not worth very much. So unless that's what you want to communicate, uh, don't do that. Just offer them 2 time slots of the times that you think work for you. And usually they'll be able to do one of the two. If they can't, then they go, neither of those times work for me. Well, then give them 2 more. Say, well, what about this time or this time? And eventually you'll find a time that works for both of you. But you kind of want to treat it like you're a doctor's office or a dentist office, right? You're scheduling the appointment with the client, you're the professional, you have a life, you're running a business, treat it like a business. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2, I don't know if you want to write this down or not, but this was kind of a closing phrase, if you will, that really helped me early on when I was trying to figure out how to close for the appointment. I would ask them all kinds of questions, but sometimes I had difficulty knowing when or how to go ahead and close for the appointment. So here's something you can practice. You can just say, you know, you've asked a few questions, you've kind of discerned what their situation is, and now you can say, so Mitch, so here's what I would recommend we do. So you want to use that word recommend, right? Because you're showing that you're the expert, you're the professional. Based on this information that they just gave you, here's your professional opinion, right? That's the way you're coming across. So here's what I recommend we do, Mitch. Why don't we find a time to get together? That way I could go over the home buying process with you, share some recent market data so you can have the best information, the most recent accurate information for your family to make the best decision possible. And then while we're together, we could go ahead and look at some homes on the MLS. How does that sound? And they'll go, yeah, that sounds fine. Okay, could you do tomorrow at 3:30 or Thursday at 4? So literally I just list 3 things. What they really want to do is look at homes. So that's the candy that I throw in at the end. But I'm showing that I'm a professional and I'm going to go over the home buying process with them. I'm going to go over the home buying process with them as well as recent market data. Now, data can sound kind of boring to some people, but what you want to do is show them that you're coming from a place of value. You're trying to get them information so they can make the best decision possible for their family, which who doesn't want to do that, right? Like they don't want to be dumb. They don't want to make a bad decision, right? Or you could even reverse that and go, well, you don't, just a second, let me shut my door. So that doesn't happen again. Nobody wants to make a mistake, right? So anyway, I'll just say it one more time. So Mitch, based on what you shared with me today, here's what I recommend we do. Why don't we find a time to get together in the next week or so? And that way I could go over the home buying process with you and I could share with you the most accurate, up-to-date market data so you can make the best informed decision for your family. And then while we're together, we could also, maybe look at some homes, see what's out there, see what might fit what you guys are looking for. How does that sound? And, I just basically memorize that and do a variation of that with whoever I am talking to. And I mean, they could be mad at me and say, I don't ever want to see you again. I hate you. And then you just need to be prepared to say, well, so here's what I recommend we do. Why don't we find a time to get together next week? So, again, it needs to just come, like, it doesn't matter what they say or what the situation is. That's how you're going to close for the appointment. You're just going to say, so here's what I recommend we do. And lead into your 3-point thing: home buying process, market data, look at homes. Those are your 3 bullet points of why you're asking them to get together for a buyer consultation. Because you're the professional, right? So just close for the appointment, set 2 times, and they choose a time. And now now we're going to prepare for the buyer consultation. Well, let me share one more thing before we move on to that. How many people have heard of the LP Mama script? Anybody recognize LP Mama? Okay. Here's another acronym for you. So write this down. Write down the side LPMAMA. All right? LPMAMA. So when you're trying to qualify a lead, when you're trying to work with them and figure out if they're a ready, able, or willing buyer, and you're trying to set an appointment, print this off, put it on your wall, wherever in your office or wherever. And use this as your script, as kind of an outline for your script. So L stands for location. Where are they looking for a home at? Maybe it's multiple locations. The P stands for price or price point, right? What price range are they thinking they're going to be in? The first M stands for motivation. Now, don't use the word why. Why are you thinking about buying? Why are you thinking about that location? Don't use the word why. Why has a negative connotation. It sounds critical or judgmental, and it will put people on the defensive. So instead of asking why they're thinking about moving, ask, what's got you thinking about moving? It comes across totally differently when you use a what or a how question, not a why question. Okay, so you ask about their motivation, find out what the reason is that's got them thinking about buying a house. All right, the first A is agent. Do they already have an agent? Now, if they say that they do, don't just, say, okay, thank you, and hang up the phone. Ask who their agent is. Because a lot of times people might say they have an agent, but they really don't. They're just trying to get rid of you. So are you working with anybody? Oh yeah, we've got somebody. Oh, well, do you mind me asking who it is? And then, if they know, it'll just come right off the tongue. Otherwise they'll go, well, it was, I'm trying to remember who it was, oh, it was that agent we met at the open house. Okay. Have you signed any paperwork with them? Well, no. Okay, well, and then you can follow on from there about building a case why they might want to work with you. But go 2 or 3 questions deep. Make sure you're asking about the agent and following up on that and not just letting them get off the hook easy. All right, the second M is mortgage. That's where you're asking if they're pre-approved or what mortgage lender they're working with, or if they need a mortgage. Maybe they're cash. But it's the finance question of figuring out what their financial situation is. Maybe they find out that's also, are they renting? Do they already own a house that they need to sell in order to buy? You're trying to figure out their financial situation. All right, and then the last A is appointment. Set the appointment. Okay, so first off, you're having that when you're making your contacts, you come across somebody that shows some interest, you're asking them going through this LP Mama script to find out if they are a ready, able, and willing buyer. If they are, you're setting the appointment. If they aren't, then you're still sticking them in your database, right? And you're gonna nurture them, right? You're gonna continue to follow up with them and talk with them and build a relationship with them over time. Because what happens is most realtors don't follow up. That's just the bottom line. You know, somebody says they're not, somebody says, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy in like 6 months to a year. And let's say you try to follow up with them and they don't answer, and you follow up with them a second time and they don't answer. Most realtors quit following up. And then you never hear from them again because in your mind, oh, they don't want to hear from me. That's why they didn't answer the phone. When really they just live a busy life. And because buying a house is not all that urgent to them, they didn't feel a big obligation to call you back. So instead of telling yourself stories, instead of deciding for them, just keep calling them back. Like most of us just go ahead and say, well, I don't want to be a nag, or I don't like to keep calling people who don't call me back, or, we start telling ourselves a story. We start, I don't know, feeling sorry for ourselves, that they don't like me because they're not calling me back or whatever it is. Just keep calling them. Like literally, call them a couple times, and then if they don't call you back, well, then maybe you call them once a month. And I would just keep calling them once a month and leave a message. Hey, just checking in on you. Hope you're doing great. Hey, interest rates just came down a little bit. Or hey, I saw this cute house that looked like it might be something you guys might be interested in. Give me a call. Again, they will listen to those messages. They might not call you back, but you're still making a touch. They know that you called. So you just keep calling. And at some point, your persistence in calling back and leaving messages, you will eventually talk to them. You just will. So be rather persistent on the follow up because other realtors won't. And talk to experienced agents, they will all tell you the money in real estate is in the follow up. Too many people are just trying to go for the right now buyer or the right now seller, and then they get distracted and they don't have systems and models in place to do systematic follow up, and they miss out on a lot of deals. So if you will do systematic follow up and put them in your database and type out the notes of your conversations and put in a timeline and create tasks of when you need to call them the next time so that you track that and make sure that you do it, you'll make a lot more money. Okay, so that's follow up on your not now buyers, your B buyers or your C buyers. You're still going to talk to them. You're just not going to waste your time on them. Okay, so you're not showing them property. You're not doing a bunch of research for them or whatever. You're just calling them maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, whatever the case may be. Just stay in contact with them. Maybe they're on a property search or you're sending that they're on your email list, but you keep touching them, you keep nurturing them until they're ready. That's what you do with B and C buyers.
Can I ask a quick question about the buyer's contract?
Sure.
So you were saying how you leave it for 6 months. If you do come to an agreement to cancel it sooner, is there an addendum or something you have to do, or it's just done?
Well, you, again, in the new forms, there's, you pre-decide, like it's built into the contract of, whether or not, there's a thing to check that basically says if the parties are in agreement and want to terminate early, they can, or some realtors want to put in there, a dollar amount, like if you've, um, it's different if you're just maybe have shown them a few homes or whatever, but if you like actually written offers for them, or they've actually been under contract and then got cold feet and didn't buy, and like you've done all this work and everything for them, some buyer agents will actually put in a dollar amount in there of like, if I've done this level of work for you, then you're going to owe me this much money at the end if there's not a successful sales contract. So it's totally up to you as a buyer's agent how you want to handle early termination. And there are several options in the contract for that.
Is it common to have some kind of language in there that if they get to an offer point that there's a fee, and if not, then it's without a fee, or what's quote normal?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I would. Well, I don't know that I exactly know what's quote normal. And I don't even know if normal's necessarily good business practice. I would say the vast majority of real estate agents don't protect themselves and don't really operate like a business, and they're too nice. And they don't have the stomach for charging somebody something. They don't want to have the quote conflict, and so they just let people off the hook. So it's totally up to you. You kind of have to think through how you want to handle things as a business. I kind of take it on a case by case basis on how I know the person. If I know them pretty well, then obviously I'm not going to be talking to them across the table and saying, now, if you flake out on me and walk out of this deal, I'm going to charge you $2,500. Probably not going to do that with close friends or family, right? But somebody that I don't know, and then I might put that in there and just say, hey, this is kind of, I've had this happen a few times where, and I don't think that you're going to be that kind of person, but here's kind of my basic business practice. I charge 2.5%, right? You're going to already explain your fee and say, I charge 2.5%, and based on the lawsuit from 2024, technically you're responsible for paying me the 2.5%. However, 99% of the time, we're going to get that written into the contract, and the seller is going to actually end up being the one to pay me the 2.5%, or however are going to explain that. But in explaining that, that's where you would explain the other fees involved if somebody decided to terminate early. So you just kind of have to decide how you want to handle that.
And then that's where it's written on the buyer's agreement. If there's okay.
Yeah. There's several choices in there, and you just check which box, and then you fill in the amount of money that you would charge based on the amount of work that you did. Okay, so you've booked an appointment. We've did LP Mama. We figured out they were a ready buyer. They said yes to meeting with us. Now what do we do? So preparing for the buyer consultation. Where are you guys getting your real estate data?
I've messed around with Area Pro just a little bit. Still trying to figure it out.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yep, I use Area Pro too. What MLS are you on, Mitch?
I'm in Flex, Southern Oregon.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I'm on both the Willamette Valley MLS as well as regional. I don't use regional as much, but I do end up having a few buyers or sellers that are just a little bit outside of Willamette Valley and like to have that resource available to get data outside of my 4-county region. So, in addition to that, here's something that you might want to do as you build relationships with other mortgage brokers. They all have monthly newsletters or maybe even a weekly market update, what's going on with interest rates and whatnot. And so I subscribe to several of my different lender partners emails that they send out to everybody. And that kind of helps keep me in the know of what's going on the lending side. So keep that in mind as a good source for up-to-date data on financial stuff. So what you want to do is when you've had this conversation with them, you at least have a general idea of what they're looking for, where they're looking for it, and what price range. So maybe you're able to then take that and go, before I want to sit down and spend an hour to an hour and a half with somebody, I want to figure out what's out there in the market and is it realistic what they're looking for, right? Like, does it exist? Or are they looking for a unicorn, right? Or are they at a tough price point that really doesn't seem very practical or possible in the area where they're looking at? So I always go back and do a search, start looking at different properties, being able to tell, okay, here's kind of what the market looks like for what they're looking for. And then, because I want to, when we actually sit down to have the consultation, obviously you want to come across as the expert. Now, in the material here, it talks about using a buyer's guide. And let's see here. Buyer consultation, preparation, checklist. Oh, yeah, here's a good one. Yeah, number 3, ensure all decision makers attend. Okay. Don't meet with just a husband or wife and not their partner. Don't do it. It's a waste of time. If let's just say that your buyer or seller is pretty young, like let's just say you're working with a first-time home buyer and it's a couple that's just gotten married and they're in their like mid-20s or something, you need to ask, and you might even need to ask more than just one question, but you're going to need to ask if mom and dad on either side is going to be involved. And they may tell you, because they want to look all grown up, they may tell you, oh no, they're not a decision maker. But you need to be able to go deeper than that, because they might not, it's not that we're not trying to say that, hey, they're on the loan or that they're, have final say, but you can just about guarantee that mom and dad have quite a bit of input. And what you don't want to have happen is meet with this young couple and they're all excited and you go out to show them houses, and then the wife's dad oh, by the way, my dad's going to show up at these showings. Because guess what dad's going to do? Dad's going to be, well, I'm looking out for my daughter and I'm going to find out everything that's wrong with all of these houses and tell them why they shouldn't buy any of them. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Because he thinks that's what he needs to do in order to do his fatherly duties. Okay, so you need to figure out in a nice way to encourage mom and dad or whoever else is involved in their life to be a part of the consultation up front so that everybody's on the same page. Because then when you make your presentation and start building some rapport, you're building the rapport with them as well and not just with the couple. So then now when you go out to show homes, everybody's on the same team. We're all working together. They're more comfortable with you instead of working against you. Okay. So make sure that all the decision makers attend. The other place that happens is in very elderly clients, but usually that's on the sell side where their adult children get involved and they might not be the only decision maker. So anyway, just make sure you ask about, are there any other people, and maybe you don't use the word decision maker because maybe that comes across too strong of a term, but I'm trying to think of what else you could say. Is there anybody else that would be helping you in some way? You know, are mom or dad interested in going on any of the showings to look at homes with you? Oh yeah, we'd like for them to come along. Okay, well, could they also come to the consultation? Because I think it'd be really important. I'd love to meet them, and I want to make sure they have all the information too. They probably haven't bought or sold a house in quite a while, and I want to make sure they understand today's market. Something like that, where you make it, you know, it's not threatening or anything. You're just trying to help bring everybody along, but you need to make sure that all the decision makers are there. Okay, so then it says complete your buyer's guide. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have never used a buyer's guide. Yeah, I'm just not that's not my style. So if that's your style and you want to put together a beautiful packet and with helpful information, I'm not saying, you know, don't do that. Just know that I don't do that and I don't think it's hurt my business. So I wouldn't put a ton of stock into it and I wouldn't spend a ton of money on it because I don't know that it makes that huge of a difference. Okay. Top 10 services of the buyer value proposition: a needs analysis, pre-qualified, pre-approval, neighborhood information, home search, make an offer, negotiating to buy, vendor coordination, premium. Okay. I basically tell them this. My job is three things. There's three parts to my job. And it's not finding you a home. In today's world with the internet, you have way more access and more time on your hands than I do, and more interest, and you know what you want and what you're looking for. So you don't necessarily need me to find you a home. My job is to advise. All right, so I bring my knowledge and experience to the table to help advise you on the piece of property that you're looking to purchase, on whether or not it's a good investment over time. All right. And then my second part of my job is to negotiate. Right. So I'm trying to help you get the best deal possible. Now, negotiating, you know, and then you can go into negotiating and help them understand what negotiating looks like in real estate, because usually what they think of when they think of negotiating, they think of lawyers. And that's totally different in the realm of law versus the realm of real estate. And so you got to help them understand that in negotiating in real estate, we're not looking for a win-lose situation. We're not trying to beat the other side and come out on top and be tough negotiators. We're looking for a win-win solution because we've got to lock arms with these sellers for 30 to 45 days, and they need to feel like they're winning, and you need to feel like you're winning. And yes, I'm going to advocate for you. I'm also trying to mediate and help bring two parties together, right? So you might have to define what negotiating looks like. So I'm here to advise, negotiate, and thirdly, I'm here to protect. So I'm here to watch out for you, both financially and property wise, that you're not, going to buy something that, has, I don't know, some, buried oil tank in the backyard that now all of a sudden you're going to spend $10,000 digging up because DEQ is going to come after you. Right. There's just certain things that we know about in the industry that we can look out for our clients and make sure and protect them against buying the wrong kind of property or getting into a bad situation, financially or what have you. So those are the three big values that you bring to the table, and we do it all for whatever percentage you want to set, like whether that's 2.5. Some people set it at 3. Some people even may set it at 3.5. I don't know. Kind of depends on the property. Sometimes if you're, maybe dealing with $1 million buyer, then maybe you're at 2%. But it's totally up to you what you want to set, what you say you're setting your value at. But that's what you're bringing to the table. I would just narrow it down to those 3 things. And yeah, like I said, I don't, put a whole lot of stock in buyer guides, but here's all the things that you could put in a buyer's guide to give your client information, helpful stuff. A lot of this I'll end up going over with them either at the appointment or along the process, right? Buyer's guide, blah, blah, blah. Where are we at here? Okay, conducting the buyer consultation. Let's talk about the consultation. All right. So and you're probably not anywhere close to a market center. No, okay. So there would be an exception, but if you're anywhere halfway close to a market center, or you have the ability to meet in some kind of professional space, like a conference room or something, I highly recommend that. I think it's, again, we want to come across as professionals. So, I either meet with my clients in Salem at the Salem Market Center or my branch office over here in Dallas. There's been very, very few rare occasions where I've met with somebody at a coffee shop or something like that. But in your case, Emily, you may just need to meet wherever you can meet. So I get that. But again, part of it's psychological. Okay. So if I'm setting an appointment, I want them to come to my office because it's on my turf, right? I'm the leader. They're coming to me. You see what it's, because a lot of times in a buyer situation, you have those people out there that don't really respect realtors, and they just want to use you as a door opener, and they want you to meet them at the house that they want to see. And outside of that, they're really not very interested in what you have to say or see really any value in what you do. Okay. So the first test, if you will, is to see if that person will meet you at your office, at your market center. Okay. If they'll do that, that's a very good sign. I don't know what the percentage would be, but I bet you it would be like 90%. There's a very good sign. If they will meet you at your office, they're much more likely to be the type of client who's actually going to follow your advice and follow you through the process as you lead them to purchase a home. Okay. But then you've got to lead, right? They'll come, but now we've got to be prepared and we got to be ready and have a system down for how we're going to lead them. So that's what I'm going to go over here real quickly in the buyer consultation. So they've come, you're in a professional space, they sit down, maybe you have a couple bottles of water out or what have you. And I'll direct them to what seats I want them to use so they can see the TV screen when we go to look at homes. I'll have my buyer agreement already printed out and pre-filled out as much as possible. I'll have my disclosed limited agency for buyers form out there as well. And then I just tell them, thanks, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, for coming in today. I've got 3 goals today for our meeting. So right up front, maybe you have a little bit of chit chat to get to know them a little bit and just kind of, break the ice. But within a few minutes, I'm going to get down to business and help them see that I'm organized. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to waste their time. I'm a professional and I'm leading them. Okay. So I'm going to say, hey, I've got 3 goals for our meeting this afternoon. Number 1, I want to get to know you better and ask you some questions about the specific kind of property that you guys are looking for so I can better understand your situation and know how to help you. Number 2, I'm going to share with you the most recent and accurate market data for buying homes in the neighborhoods that you're interested in so that you can make the best decision possible and so that you're prepared for what to expect when we get out there and find the home that you guys want to purchase. I'm also going to share with you a little information about myself and what you can expect from me. And then thirdly, if we decide to do business together, if you feel like we're a good fit and you want to move forward, then at that point, I've got some paperwork for us to fill out. And then we can look at some homes. How does that sound? So do you see what I've done? I've shown that I'm interested in them. I'm the professional. I'm going to give them all the data. And then they have an opportunity. But it's very clear that I'm going to be asking them for a commitment. That I feel like we're a good fit. And if we're going to move forward together, see, I haven't even shown them any homes yet. I go through those 2 things first. Then if we're a good fit, and that, that's on you too. Like you could feel like maybe you found out some information that kind of showed you that maybe they're not really a ready buyer. And you kind of go, oh, I'm not sure. I'd have to say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, based on our talk today, here's my best recommendation. Maybe we could get back together in 3 to 6 months and after you've been able to save up more money or whatever the situation is. But you're going to be able to determine whether or not you want to work with them and they're going to determine whether or not they want to work with you. And then I'm going to, okay, we're going to do some paperwork and then I'm going to show you homes, right? Because the homes is what they really want to get to, but you got to hold out and get a commitment from them first. Okay. Don't go to just looking at homes once you get them in the office. Okay. Because that's just, we'll spend all our time doing that and you won't really get anywhere. So make sure you're organized. And like I said, I the way I remember it is I have basically 3 points to my talk, if you will. And the first point is having some sort of buyer questionnaire that I work through and asking them all the important questions of finding out what kind of house they're looking for. So not just bedrooms and bathrooms, house style, size of yard, does it have a fence, location, price range, what kind of kitchen, is a fireplace important, is high-speed internet important? There's just a myriad of things that sometimes people neglect to tell you if you aren't thoughtful and systematic about asking them all the questions. And I'll tell you this, the more questions you ask and the more detailed you get in the buyer consultation, the more you get them dialed in and figured out, the less time you'll spend out in the field looking at homes. You just will. It's like if you spend more time here, then when you go out there, you'll know exactly what you're looking for and you'll find it a lot faster. The less work you do in the consultation, the more time you're going to spend in the field looking at homes, trying to figure out your clients and figure out what it is they like and don't like. And you're going to waste a ton of time and gas. So here's Tim's secrets for one home tour clients, I guess is what I'll call it. All right. So I don't know if it would surprise you, but I would say maybe about 70% of my buyers, I take them out one time. I'll take them out one time. We'll look at 3 to 5 homes. They put in an offer. I get them under contract. Boom, we're done. So it's not multiple trips. It's not 10 or 20 houses. We're not dinking around with all that. So how do I get them there? All right. So if you're taking notes, here's how I get them there. One, I know my stuff, right? Like know the inventory, get familiarized with the inventory so you know what you're talking about. So that when you get to the looking at homes with your client, you can go, oh yeah, I was in that house. I saw that house. This house has da 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 da. So you can talk intelligently about the inventory. Maybe it's spend some time looking through the inventory either online or you go out and actually go view some of the vacant listings and get a sense for what is out there. All right. Number 2. So once I've gone through in that second point of going through my presentation, when I'm talking about myself, all right. Number 1, I stand up for myself and I set some boundaries, meaning I'll say, okay, Mitch, I want to work hard for you. I am available, but I try to keep normal business hours. So if it's between 8:30 and 5, totally feel free to give me a call or text me or email me. If it's before or after that, I do have my phone. I do check my phone, but I might be with my family. I might be doing something. So if I don't answer or don't get back to you, I will definitely get back to you the following morning. So again, you're showing, here's my boundaries. I am attentive, and I am responsive, and I will communicate in a timely fashion, but I'm also not available 24/7 for you to send me a text at 10 o'clock at night. Okay. So set some boundaries for yourself. Your family will appreciate it immensely. Okay. So you don't have to feel like you need to be on your phone all the time. And so here's what I tell my people. So Mitch, I'll call you back the next day, because here's what I found in 8 years of real estate. There really aren't any emergencies, right? So yeah, a bunch of you just kind of smiled and chuckled, right? That's what they'll do. You'll just say there really aren't any emergencies in real estate, and they'll go, "That's kind of funny, right?" Well, then it reminds them that when they have that fear, or when they have that question and it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they'll go, "Oh yeah, Tim said," he's probably not going to respond. And they may or may not send me that text. But I already know that I've put a boundary around it because I set it in the appointment so they know what to expect. And so then I just follow through on what I said I was going to do. And then people respect you. So just learn to respect yourself and your family and set some boundaries. Okay, the next thing I do is I will tell my clients, I said, "Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I don't know, this might surprise you, but did you know about at least 70% of or I might just even say the majority of my buyers end up putting an offer on their first time out." Now, most everybody will be surprised by that. They'll go, "Really?" I go, "Yes." And I come across as, I want to come across as friendly and helpful, and I let them know, hey, it's not because of any arm twisting or any sales tactics. Okay, I'm not here to convince anybody to buy a home. I just make it really simple and really easy. I want to value people's time, because time is money, and the longer it takes for somebody to buy a house, it could cost them hundreds, thousands of dollars. So I'm trying to do a good job for them, in making it simple and quick. Um, Again, you just need to show that you're adding value to them, and it's not that you're looking for a quick paycheck. But you do want to be effective and efficient, right? So there's no reason that you need to be going out a bunch of times. That just shows that you don't know what you're doing. They will eventually feel like you don't know what you're doing, and that we're just kind of aimlessly looking at houses. So here's what I tell them. I get it really focused, and basically say, one, I set the expectation. Majority of my clients put in an offer the first time out. And here's why. I use the ophthalmologist method. They go, "The ophthalmologist method?" Yeah, have you been to the eye doctor, right? You've been to the eye doctor. What does the eye doctor say? 1 or 2, 3 or 4, right? On the lenses. And so I just say, hey, we're going to go out and look at, say, 5 homes. And when we go look at those 5 homes, what I know is that a confused mind can't make a decision. So instead of trying to remember all the features and all the information about 5 homes, I make it really simple, so you only have to remember 1 house at a time. So we'll go into house number 1, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We'll look all through it. We'll meet back up in the living room, and I'll say, "What did you like about the house?" Now notice I didn't ask them what they didn't like about the house. Okay? Just ask them what they like about the house. Keep it on the positive side. So you ask them what they like about the house. "Oh, I love the kitchen. Blah, 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 blah." Okay, great. Now we're going to go to house number 2. I'll ask, same thing. I'll ask you what you like about the house. And then you'll hear me say, "Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if you could only choose between house number 1 and house number 2, if those were your only options, which one would you choose?" And what you show them is not that you're trying to corner them, but that you're walking alongside them and you're helping them make these micro decisions every step of the way, so that at the end, they're not having to try to sort through everything and make this big decision that then is overwhelming and they can't make the decision. So you're just saying, you're between the two of you, you're going to be able to say, "Hey, I think this location's better, this layout's better, this price is better," whatever it is, you're going to weigh all those different factors and say whether house number 1 or house number 2 is the better option. And so you go, oh, okay, yeah, house number 2 is the better option. Okay, great. We can toss away house number 1. You don't have to remember it anymore. All right, so then we go to house number 3, 4, 5, do the same exercise at each one. And then at the end, it's going to be between whatever the favorite house is and house number 5, which one's the better option. So now you can see, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we looked at 19 homes when we were at the consultation. You saw everything that was available in your price point and in the location where you wanted to move to. All right. And we narrowed it down and we looked at these 5 homes. And now you determined that for the money that you have to work with, this is the best option for your family. Is there any reason why we can't do some paperwork? No. Yeah, I guess that's fine. So maybe you have your mortgage calculator handy, and because usually they're worried about what's the monthly payment going to be. So you can at least dial it in and give them a pretty close estimate of what the monthly payment is going to be. And then they go, okay, yeah, I guess so. Why not? And then boom, I'm writing an offer. Okay. So that's how you do it. That's literally how you do it. And if you'll do that, if you'll ask them a ton of questions, if you'll show them everything and you'll help them see that they've seen everything and that there aren't any hidden listings out there that they haven't seen, and they've narrowed it down to the ones that are the best options for them, then you'll find that most of them will end up putting an offer. But I go ahead, here's the last thing. The other point to this is this. Let's just say we go through this whole tour and you don't like any of the options. None of the options look like it's the house. That is okay. That happens sometimes. And Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if that happens, here's what you'll hear me say. Again, I'm setting expectations. I'm telling them up front, and then all I have to do is follow through on the backside. And it demonstrates leadership. And it creates security and calmness. They know what to expect. They're not afraid that you're going to gang up on them with some sales tactic at the end. You're doing exactly what you said you were going to do in the consultation. It totally puts them at ease. Okay. So here's what you just say. So when we get to the end, if you don't like any of the houses, I just want to share with you, there's only 3 things that we can change. We can change the location. So if we're not finding the house that you're looking for in the neighborhood or town that you said, we might need to change location. We could change the price point. We could go higher or lower. Or the only third thing that we can change is our expectations around the house itself. Maybe they need a 4-bedroom and maybe we open it up to 3 bedrooms that gets the price down to where they need it to be. And we find one with some bonus room that could be converted into a 4th bedroom or whatever the case may be. But you help them see that those are the only 3 things that we can change, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. So I just say that because if we don't change anything, what I know, because realtors base their listings on previous sales, that if we go out there and look in the same locations at the same price points, we're going to end up finding the same kind of houses that we found this time. And it's just going to get frustrating and it's going to feel like a waste of time. And I don't want to waste your time. So it's kind of like hunting. If you're looking in a certain place and the animals aren't there, we need to look somewhere else, or we need to change something about what we're doing in trying to find the house. So when we get there, be thinking about which one of those 3 things you would like to change in your home search, because I don't want us to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? Because that's the definition of insanity. So again, I'm offering leadership. I'm not letting them off the hook, because sometimes buyers will get stuck in finding the perfect house that doesn't exist. All right. and you're showing them that you're an experienced real estate agent and you're aware of that, and you don't have to say that exact thing to them, but I just let them know that there's only 3 things that they can change. Um, and that we're going to be changing something about their search if they didn't, if, if I didn't do my job, if I didn't get them into the right houses on that first tour, then something's not right. Like we need to go back, we need to change something. I need to ask some more questions. And I can put the onus back on me, like, show that I'm seriously trying to do a good job for them. And so then, but it holds them accountable. They can't just say, I just want to look at more homes. I want to look at more homes. I want to look at more homes and not make a decision. I'm showing them that I have a system and a model that works. And then I'm kind of holding their feet to the fire so that we're not just looking at a bazillion homes. And I'm willing to go back out, but we're going to change something about our search. And it just helps them. It helps change the tone. It helps them realize that we're not just looking at homes because it's fun. That there's a mission and that there's an end and there's a goal, right? So anyway, use those methods however they work for you. They've worked really, really great for me in having a successful consultation and getting out there and actually getting them into a house. Now, I kind of skipped over the buyer agreement. Emily, you had a question about it. We talked a little bit about it. Are there any other questions about the buyer agreement itself or about the lawsuit that I could answer?
I have one. It's kind of the flip side to the lawsuit buyer agreement. I had someone ask, and I talked to Mara about it too, but if I would be willing to lower my commission as a listing agent because of the buyer agreement, and if they ended up paying the buyer's agent's commission. And
Right.
so I was really struggling with the polite way to say that.
Gotcha. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you're trying to be sensitive to this client, realizing that they potentially might end up needing to pay your buyer agent fee. So you want to make sure you're not charging them too much on the listing side.
No, it was a listing. It was one of my listings. And he said, well, if we end up paying the buyer's commission, are you willing to lower your commission?
Okay, on overall. Okay.
Right. So
Trying to think about how to answer that.
yeah, because I want to say no. I mean, that was my whole thing. I'm not gonna work
No.
cheaper. Yeah. And I wrote some things down that Mara said, but just in my own brain, that's a hard one.
Okay, well, here's the best one that I've heard. Mr. Seller, let me tell you why that's not in your best interest. That'll just totally shock them. They'll be like, what in the world are you talking about? How is it not in my best interest? If you were to talk to me and I was willing to just like that lower my commission rate, all right, if I don't take my own money seriously and I'm willing to negotiate it away, what do you think I'm going to do with your money when I'm negotiating on your behalf with the other party? See how that works?
Yeah.
Because they want you to be a tough negotiator, but then they just want you to roll over and play dead and take less money. Like if I'm going to give up my money that easily, then that shows that I'm not a very good negotiator and you shouldn't hire me.
Okay. That's because I looked up, sorry, I'm writing it down.
That's
I looked up a couple AI responses and they were good, but it was things that I would feel like a liar if I said like, oh, you're paying for all my expertise and experience. And it's like, well, I'm brand new. I don't have expertise and experience.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get it.
Some of those weren't applicable, but I know there's a better way to say it. But
right. No, I would go after the negotiator piece of it. Because they do, especially sellers, they want you to be good negotiators on their behalf. So if
Right.
I just roll over and I'm not a good negotiator for my own paycheck, how can I be a good negotiator for you with your
And
money?
and before the lawsuit, this was last August, right?
Uh-huh.
The seller always paid the commission. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Before, right. It was, you would be meeting with your seller and going, basically negotiating, 5 to 6%, and then, deciding how much of that you were going to keep and how much of that you were going to pass on to a buyer's agent.
So
And
it's nothing new. It's just structured differently.
exactly.
Okay.
They do this big stink about wanting to separate out the two parties and make the two contracts separate. But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the reality is it still works the same way. And 99% of your buyers are going to be asking for probably 2.5%.
And
So
why did they? Sorry.
no, well, I just say I'm not telling you this to say you have to pay it. I'm just warning you that this is what I've seen since the lawsuit is it still works the same way. People are still asking because think about it, Mr. Seller. The buyer's already coming up with, $10,000+ for a down payment. And if they've got any money left after that, they're using it for closing costs. They don't have anything, most of them aren't going to have anything beyond that to pay their realtor. So just saying, yeah, the lawsuit says you don't have to, and that's true. At the same time, you severely cut down your buyer pool if you are adamant about saying you're not going to pay a buyer agent commission for your buyer because 99% of the buyers are going to ask for it. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So I at least I just warn them, or not warn them, I just make them aware and say, hey, this is probably going to be the case. Be prepared for that. I don't want it to surprise them. And then, up front, I don't know what you said, but I just say, hey, I work for 3%. And here's why, and based in my listing presentation, I kind of go over what my value is and what I'm offering, and that's why I charge the 3%. Now, and I'm not going to say this to them, but in the actual transaction itself, if the deal looks like it's going to fall apart because the seller doesn't want to fix, I don't know, something that could be covered by a home warranty, and I could buy I've got an example. I had a really big deal, like this is a $1.1 million deal, and my seller doesn't want to pay for a septic inspection because we just had one done like a month or two earlier, and we had the report and we were willing to give it to the buyer, but the buyer wanted to do another one and wanted the seller to pay for it. And the seller's like, no way, I'm not paying for that. Okay. So literally this deal is going to fall apart because of like a, I don't know, $200 or $300 septic inspection on the, or pumping on the seller side. So I just paid for it. So you're going to have those times where you make business decisions to keep deals together or to make things work for clients. But yeah, you don't advertise that up front. And you don't.
I just kind of bluffed it because they had no idea that I was like brand spanking new. So I just kind of kicked the can down the road and I said, well, the majority of the time the buyers or the sellers pay for it anyway. So I said, I think that's a good conversation for down the road. Once we have an offer, that's something that could be negotiated. And I just went, oh shoot, I got to figure out how to answer that one better.
Yeah. Anyway, that's That's how I've answered that one in the past. Yeah.
And why, and I don't know if it's a quick answer, but what was the basis of the lawsuit last year to make it split in the first place?
Well, I think that I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but the short answer is that there were enough sellers who were just grumbling about paying 6% that they just kind of, some lawyer got a hold of it and we're like, well, you shouldn't have to do that, right? So it was just sellers who wanted to not have to pay as much, that felt like they were getting ripped off and not getting their money's worth. And then on the lawyer side, though, it actually makes sense because in contract law, if you have an agreement between a seller and their agent, all right, and you have a contract between a buyer and their agent, and then the buyer and seller are coming together in a contract to do a deal together, why should the listing agent be able to basically it's the listing agent's brokerage then paying money to the buyer broker's brokerage, like you're in some deal together because you're advertising, hey, I'm gonna give you 2.5% if you bring a buyer. So what they're trying to say is that these two brokers can't be in a deal together if their two clients are in a deal together. Their duties between them and their client, and them and their client, and then the two clients can then hash out who's going to pay what.
Gotcha.
So they were just trying to clarify the law, which that makes sense, but all that millions of dollars and all the stuff that all the brokerages had to go through and NAR and everything, and it really didn't change anything. So yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but yeah, that's the change. So yeah, I hope I've shared some helpful stuff with you guys today. We're basically about out of time. My email is timothy.english@kw.com. So just my name, timothy.english@kw.com. If you have any questions, you get stuck anywhere, you want to answer to a question, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll be glad to help you out with anything real estate wise. So thanks for being a great group this afternoon and wish you guys all the best.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
You bet. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir.
You bet. Take care.